We appreciate Turkey's willingness to continue facilitating negotiations with Ukraine and largely peaceful Ukraine conflict resolution. Russia is interested in ensuring that all agreements reached over the past 3 years on this subject are fulfilled. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said about our Ukrainian neighbors, whose Western patrons not only allow them to do whatever they wish but also incite them. The stance of European countries particularly demonstrates it. At all times, regardless of what they were called, ceasefire, moratorium, truce, the Ukrainian regime continuously and deliberately targeted energy infrastructure and other civilian sites, residential buildings, shops, kindergartens, schools, and generally speaking, citizens. Tragically, civilians have been and continue to be among the casualties, and the fact that the Western elite, including the United States, but mainly Europe, tried to ignore it is evident to everyone. Those who are trying to steer the United States, the current U.S. administration, onto Biden's position, the path of war, perfectly understand the situation. Therefore, our retaliatory strikes, as you mentioned, are entirely appropriate under the current circumstances. The perpetrator must be held accountable, and I can assure you that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and his junta are fully aware of the reasons. They also know very well that, unlike their attacks, our strikes target only military facilities and those used by the armed forces of Ukraine. Regarding rumors about the U.S. wishing to change the Russian negotiator, you see, we have been communicating well with the United States, unlike during Biden's term of office, which is fading into history. And if the United States wished to convey anything to us, they would know how to do it without resorting to such a degrading method as spreading rumors. As for Mr. Russian Presidential Aide Vladimir Medinsky, head of the Russian negotiating delegation, he is appointed, in case anyone doubts, by the Russian President Vladimir Putin and not by the leader or representative of any other state. During their last phone conversation, our presidents agreed to prepare an exchange of detainees between the United States and Russia. For apparent reasons, the work is being coordinated by the relevant and competent authorities. I do not assume that Brussels would attempt to disrupt the resumed negotiations. I see these attempts, as does any objective observer. They go as far as completely unprecedented actions, statements, and calls. And most importantly, it can be sensed that the European hawks led by France, Britain, Germany, and Poland are confused and unnerved, realizing they do not have the strength to continue this war. And they are scared to death that the United States might shrug them off and say to deal with the mess they have started together with Biden on their own. By the way, U.S. President Donald Trump has already stated that it was not his war, and he is interested in further negotiations between Russia and Ukraine. As for the second round of talks between Russia and Ukraine, if you ask me, I would once again turn to our Turkish friends. Istanbul is a great place. President Trump is a person who prefers to achieve results. Seeing that his efforts are being sabotaged by a group of European representatives who are pushing Ukraine into completely reckless actions, including drone attacks on Moscow, our other cities, on the helicopter carrying the Russian president, clearly, he might express certain emotions. And certainly, being a person who dislikes obstacles on the path to achieving noble goals, he has certain assessments, certain rhetoric. It is better not to pay attention to the rhetoric, but to ensure that Europe stops sabotaging the progress toward peace, which is supported by both the United States and Turkey, and to which Russia is fully committed. As President Putin told Mr. Fidan yesterday, stating our readiness, once memoranda are exchanged, to resume negotiations with the Ukrainian delegation. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz's statement only once again highlights the competence level of those who have now come to power in Europe. And yesterday he said in such a pretentious manner there would be no restrictions on strike range from that moment. Besides expressing his own opinion, he represented France, Britain, and the United States. A few minutes or an hour later, Mr. Morsi's vice-chancellor said that there was no such discussion. It was repeated, as I understand, by the Bundsware representatives. And then Mr. Morris, seemingly figuring out what he actually said, stated that he didn't mean a new decision, but another one that had been made by Berlin's former administration. This once again proves our assumption that the decision to allow Ukraine to do whatever it wishes, at least within certain limits and in the context of launching strikes on Russia, was made a long time ago and kept secret.
Russia-Ukraine conflict was, certainly, an important subject of the talks in Moscow. Sending an officially approved delegation to Istanbul, Putin ensured a positive outcome of the talks. We are pleased that the exchange agreed at the talks took place over the weekend. We are also hopeful that the talks will quickly transform into a ceasefire and then a durable peace, as our President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has said to both sides that Turkey is always ready to provide all assistance in this process and host further discussions. It is necessary to finalize the ongoing negotiations between Russia and Ukraine with a tangible result. First of all, we held talks in Istanbul, stated our proposals for further talks in Turkey, informed the sides that we are ready to contribute in any way possible to this endeavor. And answering your question, the exchange of prisoners of war, the first point of the agreement, is completed. And I have also been informed by Mr. Putin and Mr. Lavrov that Russia is working on the ceasefire terms and will hand them over to Ukraine, which is the second point of the agreement reached in Istanbul. We have always mentioned our hospitality. We believe it is a duty for our region and for world peace. Our president has been calling the international community to peace since the beginning of the war, because we live in the same region and therefore face the same situation. We would certainly like to resolve this issue in a way suitable for both sides, and we will continue to offer our full support. Of course, we want this issue to be resolved in the best possible way so that both sides can come to an agreement, so we will continue to provide the necessary assistance in this matter.